Tom Aspinall is the undisputed UFC Heavyweight champion. But right now, he's not available to fight, and that single fact has quietly stalled the entire division. With no clear return date, no confirmed timeline, and no guaranteed next challenger, a question is starting to gain real momentum behind the scenes. Should the UFC introduce an interim heavyweight title to keep things moving? That question is no longer hypothetical, because a contender just raised his hand, named his opponents, and laid out a plan that could reshape the heavyweight picture for the next year. And it doesn't involve waiting. The heavyweight standstill. The UFC heavyweight division has always moved differently than the rest of the roster. Fewer fights, longer layoffs, and massive consequences attached to every matchup. Right now, that system is under strain. Tom Aspinall, widely viewed as one of the most technically complete heavyweights in modern MMA, is dealing with a serious medical setback. According to publicly available reports, the champion may require multiple procedures related to his vision, a situation that understandably removes any immediate pressure for a quick return. The UFC has not announced a timetable. No fight has been scheduled. No contender has been officially named. And for a division where fighters often compete once a year, sometimes less, inactivity can ripple fast. This is where opportunity quietly enters the conversation. Waldo Cortes-Acosta's timing. Waldo Cortes-Acosta is not the loudest name in the heavyweight division. He doesn't rely on controversy. He doesn't build hype through call-outs alone. And until recently, he wasn't part of any title discussion. That changed last month. At UFC 324 in Las Vegas, Cortes-Acosta delivered a decisive win over Derek Lewis, one of the most experienced and dangerous knockout artists in UFC history. The performance was not chaotic or reckless. It was controlled, technical, and methodical. And more importantly, it was convincing. Now ranked inside the top 5, Cortes-Acosta finds himself in a rare position, active, healthy, and climbing, while the title picture is temporarily frozen. Instead of waiting, he's proposing a solution. The interim title proposal. In an interview with Hablamos MMA, Cortes-Acosta laid out his position clearly. With Aspinall sidelined and no confirmed return date, the heavyweight contender believes an interim title could serve a practical purpose. Not as a shortcut, but as a placeholder that keeps the division active. His proposal is straightforward. Create an interim heavyweight title. Match 2 available top contenders. Let the winner face the undisputed champion when he returns. This isn't a new concept in the UFC, but at heavyweight, it carries unique weight. And Cortes-Acosta didn't stop there. He named names. Why Ciryl Gane and Alexander Volkov matter. The two fighters Cortes-Acosta mentioned are not random choices. Ciryl Gane and Alexander Volkov represent two very different but equally relevant paths in the heavyweight hierarchy. Ciryl Gane, a former interim champion himself, Gane remains one of the most technically refined heavyweights on the roster. His movement, striking precision and composure have already taken him to the top once, and his name still carries championship credibility. A rematch between Gane and Aspinall has been discussed in the past, making Gane a logical figure in any interim conversation. Alexander Volkov. Quietly consistent and rarely inactive, Volkov has rebuilt his position through disciplined performances and experience. He's tall, durable, and tactically sound, and crucially, available. From a matchmaking standpoint, both options solve a problem. They keep the division active without forcing Aspinall to rush back. Why? This isn't just about one fighter. At first glance, this looks like a single contender pushing his luck, but zoom out, and this becomes a structural issue. Heavyweight contenders don't get unlimited windows. Careers in this division are shaped by timing more than volume. 1 year of inactivity can mean losing ranking momentum, missing peak physical condition, or being passed over entirely. By proposing an interim title, Cortes-Acosta isn't just advocating for himself. He's highlighting a broader question. How long should an entire division wait for one champion's recovery? The UFC's complicated history with interim titles. Interim belts are controversial, and the UFC knows it. In some cases, they've preserved divisions during long absences. In others, they've caused confusion, delays, or title bottlenecks. Fans remember situations where interim champions waited longer than expected. They also remember cases where interim titles became permanent storylines. But recently, interim belts have become more common, particularly when champions are unavailable for extended periods. From a promotional standpoint, interim titles create stakes, maintain pay-per-view interest, give contenders clarity. And clarity is exactly what heavyweight lacks right now. Cortes-Acosta's record and credibility. It's important to understand why this proposal is being taken seriously. Cortes-Acosta isn't an untested prospect. Since earning his contract on Dana White's Contender Series in 2022, he's built a strong UFC run, compiling a 10-2 record inside the promotion with 5 knockouts. His fighting style isn't reckless. It's efficient, measured, and designed to last 5 rounds. At 34 years old, he's not asking for time. He's asking for relevance. And in a division where opportunities are rare, that matters. The real question, the UFC must answer. This now puts the UFC in a strategic position. They can wait indefinitely for Aspinall's return, risk stagnation at heavyweight, or introduce a temporary solution that keeps contenders active. None of these options are perfect, but ignoring the issue isn't neutral. It has consequences, and fans are starting to notice. What happens if the UFC says yes? If the UFC approves an interim heavyweight title, several outcomes follow immediately. Clear direction. Contenders know where they stand. No speculation, no guesswork. A marketable event. Heavyweight title fights draw attention. Interim or not. A defined return path for Aspinall. The champion returns knowing exactly who's next. In this scenario, Cortes-Acosta doesn't skip the line. He earns a place in it. What happens if the UFC says no? If the UFC declines the interim route, the division enters a holding pattern. Top contenders either take lower risk fights that don't move them forward, or sit out, hoping timing works in their favor. Neither option benefits the division long term. And for fighters approaching their physical prime, waiting is rarely the smart play. The fan perspective. From a fan standpoint, this debate is less about belts and more about momentum. Heavyweight fans want clarity. They want to know who's next, why they're next, and when it all leads back to the champion. An interim title doesn't solve everything, but it creates a roadmap. Why this moment matters more than it seems. This situation isn't just about one injury or one contender. It reflects how modern MMA balances fighter health, promotional timelines, and competitive fairness. Aspinall's recovery should not be rushed, but the division shouldn't freeze entirely either. That tension is exactly why Cortes-Acosta's proposal landed. Not because it's loud, but because it's logical. The heavyweight division is at a crossroads. Tom Aspinall remains the champion, and his health comes first. But behind him, contenders are lining up, careers are advancing, and time is moving. Waldo Cortes-Acosta didn't demand anything. He presented an option. An interim title wouldn't replace the champion. It would preserve the division until the champion returns. Now the decision belongs to the UFC, and depending on what they choose, the next chapter of the heavyweight story could look very different. Because the real question isn't who deserves the belt today, it's how long a division can afford to wait. In the next video, we'll break down how the UFC historically decides when an interim title is justified, and what patterns suggest about what comes next.